Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
Welcome to the bubble. I am your perennial Michael Savage. Speaking to you from Earth. Not yet in heaven. We're all in our little bubble. Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, half naked, half dressed, half alive, half dead, showing our private parts, making them public. And then we wake up and we see an attorney general was a deviant of the worst kind, as close to psychosis as you can imagine, if the stories of these women are to be believed. And we don't know what to make of it. Now everyone's going, oh, I'm shocked. Governor Cuomo, oh, he's shocked, stunned. De Blasio was horrified over the Schneiderman thing. Cuomo, revelations were shocking, disturbing. Been going on in New York State for years. They paid out tens of millions of dollars for sexual harassment up there in New York State. Are you joking? Now, I know from the inside something that no one knows, but I'll tell it to you without divulging the source, which is that Schneiderman allegedly knew for 3 or 4 months this was coming. He just didn't know the day. I mean, this didn't happen overnight. It hit us overnight. But he knew it was coming. I mean, this took a long time to put together. So they got rid of him. So yesterday we talked about who did it. And you couldn't guess anyone. It could have been Mr. Giuliani and his connections. It could be the Trump people who finally decided to fight back. They got investigators to do what should have been done a long time ago. But I'd like to see them do it now to the media. I want to see them put the same people that they did on this guy Schneiderman on everyone at CNN, MSNBC, and all the networks. That's what I want to see. You know, he who lives in the glass house and all that stuff. So we're talking about this craziness of the time we're living in, the times we're living in. And then you ask yourself, how can people still believe in God and religion in a time like this? And my answer is, now is the time to really believe in God, because there's nothing else to believe in. There's nothing else to hold on to. What are you going to hold on to here? Another, this, another that. Who are you going to believe? A politician, a talk show host? What are you going to believe? Who are you going to believe? What do you hold on to? You try to hold on to eternal values. You try to hold on to eternal truths. You wake up Tuesday morning and you see that in New York, they had a degenerate art show at the Metropolitan that every degenerate in America wants to go to. They think it's a big thing to go there, the Met Gala. So they run a defamation against the Catholic religion. And of all things, Cardinal Dolan, the highest Catholic in New York, lends them the Pope's hat to march around, some dirtbag march around on the runway there. You tell me that these are not times that test man's soul? People don't know which way to turn. The church is in ruin. Nobody knows which way to turn. And if you live in a big city, you probably see men in black clothing, religious Jews, and they go by, you ignore them. It's like, okay, there they are, but you don't know what they do. What are they, crazy, living in another world? Well, they do live in another world. And what is that world that they live in? Why do they live in that world? Why so many of them are so intelligent? Highly intelligent, highly creative, highly advanced, and yet they choose to live in another world, another dimension. They don't have televisions in their house. Most of them don't even have radios. Many of them listen to this show only, none others. I'm telling you the way it is, because occasionally I reference God, I reference faith and reason. And you ask yourself, what do they believe in? They're not Jews the way you know a Jew. They're not a Schneiderman kind of Jewish person. They're not a Woody Allen kind of Jewish person. They're not a Harvey Weinstein kind of Jewish person. These are called pious people. So what do they believe in? Well, every morning they get up and they make a prayer to God. They thank him for not making them a woman. I don't know if you know that. Don't tell that to the radical femmes because they're liable to burn the prayer books. The first thing an Orthodox religious Jew says is, thank you, God, for not making me a woman. And they don't do it to mock women. This is the thing you don't understand. They do it so the man has compassion for his wife and his daughters. Do you understand that? If you're stupid, you'll see it the wrong way. You'll misinterpret it, if your mind is closed and small. It's a way of saying, God, thank you for not making a woman because the woman suffers in a way I don't suffer. Do I have to spell it out for you and turn it into a burlesque? Then they make a really religious man. Don't worry, I'll get to the boring part of the show in a minute. We'll talk about, the news. Oh, how interesting the news. All day long, the news. The news. Your whole life is news. Every minute, flashing lights on Fox News. How much breaking news can there be? They make it up. Flashing news every minute. Fake news, whichever way you turn, left and right. So people turn it off. Do you actually think talk radio audiences are larger now than they were 5 years ago? They're much smaller. Do you know why? People are burned out. There was an election, and it's over, and they don't care anymore. Unless there's a volcano going off somewhere or a terrorist attack, they don't watch the news. They don't care. So I'm going to go somewhere that I normally don't go, and eventually I will talk about Viagra and does it affect the veins, because I looked into it. I had an expert in the field send me an email. You have to read this. This guy's an expert on phlebotomy, a medical doctor. Because I was asking him what are the side effects of Viagra, because of Schneiderman I started to ask, does it affect the veins? In other words, we know Viagra lowers blood pressure. That's how it works. It doesn't raise blood pressure. It lowers a man's blood pressure and therefore brings blood to the extremities, all of them. And as a result, things happen. But you ask, what are any side effects? We know people see blue. They they get ringing in their ears. They get half blind, but it's worth it to them. They'd rather lose their sight than... Anyway, so I'm going to talk about that later. But I want to get back to the religion for 1 minute. It's not going to be 3 hours, trust me. So what else does the religious Jewish person do other than make that immediate prayer? He puts on these weird things called phylacteries. It's leather. They put one on their head. They put one on their arm. They wrap it around their hand a specific way. They wrap it around. They make prayers. And what they do by doing this is bring themselves the energy of God. By putting these little boxes with the Torah in it on their head and on their arm, what they believe they are doing is bringing their spirit up to God and bringing God down to them. Does it work? I don't know. I have no idea if it works. But listen to this for 1 minute. Just indulge me. I was looking into this for a reason. One of the prayers that the religious Jewish man says in the morning, if you will diligently obey my commandments, which I enjoin upon you, to love the Lord your God and to serve him with all your heart and all your soul, I will give rain for your land at the proper time, the early rain and the late rain, and you will gather in your grain, your wine, and your oil. And I will give grass in your fields for your cattle, and you will eat and be sated. Take care, listen to this, Schneiderman, take care lest your heart be lured away, and you turn astray, Eric, and worship alien gods, Eric, and bow down to them, Eric. For then the Lord's wrath will flare up against you, and he will close the heavens so that there will be no rain, and the earth will not yield its produce, and you will swiftly perish from the good land which the Lord gives you, Eric. Therefore, it says, place these words of mine upon your heart and upon your soul, and bind them for a sign in your hand, and they shall be for a reminder between your eyes. But one more line. You shall teach them to your children, to speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you rise. And you shall inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Now, what that means is if you go to a Jewish person's house and you see that little weird thing on the right side of the door at an angle, that's called a mezuzah, you shall inscribe them on the doorposts of your house. A reminder that God is there. And it ends with this. So that your days and the days of your children may be prolonged on the land which the Lord swore to your fathers to give to them for as long as the heavens are above the earth. Now, the reason I'm reading this to you is because it's of interest to me, number one. But number two, some monumental biblical level things are happening on the earth right now under Donald Trump that only the media doesn't see. Only the vermin on the left and the media don't see it. In a few days, a contingent from the Trump administration on Saturday will be flying to Israel. On Monday, they will be giving a speech in Jerusalem as the American embassy is opened in Israel. For religious Christians and religious Jews, this is a fulfillment of the Bible. But more than that, it's a promise that was made by many presidents that was not fulfilled. But it's being fulfilled by the man the media cannot get enough of hating. The anti-God, faithlessness, and people without reason in the media hate this man so much, the disease, the virus of hate that is seen in the Wolf Blitzers, the Jake Tappers. I'm just thinking of people's names that come to my mind. The hatred for Trump is at a point of insanity. For example, yesterday, Pompeo was missing in action. No one knew where he was, or 2 days ago. So the stupid people at the New York Times, the knee-jerkers, did a headline. Pompeo not to be seen or heard during these difficult times. The next day, we find that he was there getting the release of 3 American prisoners from the hands of Fat Boy, of the mafia state of North Korea. This is how sick they are. As I've said to you, if the president cured Alzheimer's disease, let's say he was secretly running a laboratory with scientists, and he announced tomorrow, I found the cure for Alzheimer's disease with these 3 scientists, what would Wolf Blitzer say? The president just admitted that he had the cure for Alzheimer's, and he withheld it for months, making people suffer who could have been cured, hurting women, children, animals, by not releasing the cure for Alzheimer's disease earlier. He had it, and he didn't release it. And he should be impeached, and there should be a special investigation of collusion between Donald Trump and the scientists to deny the cure for Alzheimer's disease, etc. Okay, a little overboard, I get it. But miraculous things are happening. They're all related to religion. Iran, by the way, related to religion. The demonic people who run Iran, and make no mistake about it, these are not Muslims per se. Most Muslims want to be left alone. They want to live a life in peace. And these fanatics do not want to live a life in peace. The fanatics of Iran want to dominate the Middle East and kill everybody around who is not a Muslim. How do I know that? Because they've said so. How do I know it? Because they've said so. You haven't heard it on the news because they don't play that. You haven't seen them throw gays off roofs, have you? And yet the gay community doesn't hate the mullahs, they hate Trump. How is that possible? How? Because the media is so distorted. So I said, I can spend all day today talking about the media and get angry. And what am I going to get out of that? I'm going to get a high, just agitated, agita. And I don't want agita. Instead, so I went somewhere else. I went to another level. And I don't think you have to be religious to understand that although the very religious people in this country may be clownish to you. Remember the Woody Allen movies? Every time he could, he would mock an Orthodox Jewish person. He put himself in black garb and make believe what a fool he was. You remember? And the audiences would scream with laughter. Because Woody Allen was the fallen Jew. Woody Allen is who the Bible told us about. And that's why we love him so much. We love people who are funny. Why are they funny? Because they make a schmuck of themselves. And why do we laugh at people who make a schmuck of themselves? Because then we're not a schmuck. We're not an idiot. So we're not going to go there. We're going to talk about the higher things. So they pray, and they say that by doing this, they feel that their life will be better. They feel God will be in their life. And somehow they will be protected from all of the horrible things that do happen to us on this earth. So you say, well, come on, what kind of garbage is that? Religious school buses filled with nice kids go off cliffs and they all die. And I don't answer those questions because I'm not God. Nor does that really matter, because if those things happen, they happen. But it doesn't mean you should throw away the religion because things like that happen. People went into the gas chambers during World War II in Nazi Germany holding on to their prayer book, and the Germans laughed at them. You want to break your heart? Think about that. Religious men harm nobody in their lives. Farmers, basically. Little shopkeepers. The Nazi bastards were laughing as they machine gunned them and their naked wives, and the men held on to their religious books. What is that, faith or stupidity? More than ever today, walking around in a bubble, all of us. People walk into traffic, they don't even know they were hit by a car. Then they call a car racist or sexist that hit them. They fall down an elevator shaft and they blame the elevator. We're living in crazy times. It's very hard to retain your sanity. So people, in times like these, revert to traditions. Now, I know the news stories, Iran and this one and volcanic gases, Iran mocking Trump. I was going to do some of these like Viagra side effects and Venus pressure, which I may do. Trump said reporters should be licensed by the government. I mean, that was a big story. I was going to ask you, should the stripper's lawyer be sanctioned and disbarred? Of course he should. Of course that dirtbag should be sanctioned and disbarred, making claims like that. That's a lawyer? North Korea releases prisoners. How will media spin this? I already saw the spin. They made it the reverse of what was unbelievable. But, if I do this every day and I take my fine mind, my evolved brain, my evolved soul, my evolved spirit, and I devolve my spirit and soul and mind to this level of news, I will lose everything. And I'm too far into the game to want to lose everything. So therefore, I'm going to talk about other subjects today for a while because I don't want to do it anymore. I've had enough of it. It's enough to destroy a man's heart and mind to read this stuff. You go on every website, it's the same garbage. One attacking the other, one this, one. It's enough. It's crazy. I used to spend all my days in the medical library, UC Med Center Library, reading research articles. I felt like I was in another world, a purer world, a more logical world, a cleaner world. I'm not complaining about the media because God gave me this. This is my field. This is my reign. These are my cattle. This is my reward.
Savage.
It is the Savage Nation. What am I talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about? Because I know what I'm talking about. I see a headline. Cardinal Dolan loaned Rihanna the Pope hat. Christian fury at Met Gala's blasphemous Catholic theme. And yet, they all wanted to be there. Mitt Romney had to be there. Governor had to be there. Around the worst people on the planet. Met Gala. What's the Met Gala? A place for degenerates to show off expensive clothing. And to top it off, Cardinal Dolan, the highest Catholic in New York, loans one of the lowlives a hat that the Pope wore for a parade. It was bad enough years ago when the Brooklyn Museum, remember that one, that horrible thing that they did? Put a crucifix in a jar of urine? How I railed against that, as did Cardinal Dolan. Now he's lending a Pope's hat to this? We're living in really fallen times, mocking religion. You don't have to be religious to not mock the religious people. They are the remnant of reality on this planet, in case you don't know it. You look back in your own family. Let's say you're the coolest person on the block. Good looking, you work out, you got all of this, all that. You're not 2 generations away from a religious person, which means it's still in your DNA. What's amazing to me, well, that's a separate story. I don't even want to talk about what's amazing to me about religion. Is that who wears crosses, for example. You see these movies like I watched for 30 hours last week. I was just obsessed with it. Narcos. All the murderers, all the Mexican, all the Colombian killers, all had crosses on them. As they're executing children, they have crosses dangling from their head. You have to ask yourself what that's about. I have faith in what? What do they have faith in if they're killing children? Is the object of religion to make you a kinder person? What is the whole point of religion is what you have to ask yourself. That's really what I'm getting at. Because I've asked this question 1,000 times to myself, and I've come up with the answer, which is that unless religion gives you new powers or enables you to have more power, it's worthless to you. If religion makes you weaker, then what good is the religion? So let's say you go into a house of worship and you come out feeling dirty and dispirited and you're no good. That's not a good religion. That's a bad religion. You're not supposed to go in and come out feeling weak. To me, a religion should lift up your spirits and give you more strength. If I were running a sermon on a Sunday or a Saturday, wherever it was, even if it was a tele-evangelical thing, which I've thought about doing a lot of time, many times, just a weekend prayer service across the religions, I would make sure people left feeling spirited, not dispirited, or else I wouldn't do it. Why would you go in a church to come out feeling beaten up? Why would you go into a synagogue coming out feeling like, no good? You're supposed to come out feeling happy. That's what religion is supposed to do for you. I know it for a fact. Again, I'll get sidetracked by telling you how I know that. And maybe that's something I should do, but maybe I shouldn't do it right now. I thought North Korea releases Americans. Iran does this. Alaska does that. Baked Alaska is made this way. The Constitution was baked upside down by Thomas Jefferson. You know, this is what you want to listen to? I want to give you something that you can take home, and it may not even be ideas. It may just be a feeling. So let's take some calls and see where we're going. Let's go to WABC. Jeff, line 2. What's on your mind, Jeff?
Good afternoon, Dr. Savage. As you may recall, you and I had spoken about a decade ago. I am an ordained Orthodox rabbi. I have an undergraduate degree in mathematics and a master's in mechanical engineering, and we had talked about creationism. I would like to address your...
Are you the scholarly man who answered the question of how could the world have been created in 7 days?
Yes, that was the discussion we had.
Unbelievable. I've been looking for you for a long time. I don't even think you're on this planet. I think you're calling from another dimension, but go ahead. I'm all ears.
Well, as Michio Kaku indicates, we live in a 10-dimensional reality, and his 10 dimensions actually parallel the Kabbalistic 10 sefirot, the 10 spheres of influence that govern our existence. With remarks that you made regarding prayer, you were quoting the second paragraph of the Shema, which is said twice daily. And what is fascinating is that we keep referring to prayer. The English word pray means to ask, to request. In Hebrew, the word for prayer is lehitpalel, the root of which is palel, which means to judge. Lehitpalel is the reflexive. Consequently, the meaning of the term prayer is introspection, to analyze, evaluate, and assess that which is in the very essence of our being so that we can improve our spiritual conduct. We can aggressively announce our relationship with tradition. To quote John Quincy Adams, who we are is who we were. We live within the enlightenment of our ancestors. And the prayers to which you make reference with regard to the Hasidish or Yeshivish person, I happen not to be Hasidish. I am modern Orthodox. I am a graduate of Yeshiva University. I have a very, very direct perspective on this. One of the early blessings we make each day is a blessing in which we thank God for our fundamental physiology, the ability to go to a bathroom to relieve ourselves. When we leave that bathroom, we are enjoying to make a blessing, thanking God for having given us the ability to function.
No, I understand. There's a prayer that says, no, one of the first prayers is one that says we have many orifices and vessels that if even any of them were to close for even a moment, we wouldn't exist. So the early Jews were knowledgeable about anatomy and physiology before any other peoples on the earth, so far as I know.
That is absolutely correct. And I'll show you something very, very interesting. There is a principle in Jewish law called chazaka. It means status. The way you determine the status of a situation or a set of circumstances is if the same thing occurs 3 times in succession, that's its status. And so consequently, if one particular person sits in a particular chair in the synagogue 3 Sabbaths in a row, that is his particular place. And that is the general rule that if something happens 3 times, there's an exception to that rule, that if something happens twice that is negative, you don't do it the 3rd time because it has a, quote, chazaka, unquote, a status. And that is...
But Jeff, we're getting lost in the shuffle here. I mean, this is very interesting stuff, but I want to go back to the bigger picture for the general audience, which is not religious. My main theme is that in these crazy times that we are living, where there's no standards, no values, no center, no north, no south, no east, no west, the people are falling apart. They don't know which way to turn. And I'm saying people turn back to tradition. Do you find that to be true? Are people flocking to religion or moving away from it?
No, I find, as you said initially, that more and more people are recognizing the focal point of their being, which is tradition, which is religion. And whether it is Judaism or Catholicism or Christianity or Islam or Buddha, it doesn't matter. It is a function of recognizing that those who preceded us have determined a path that is best for the conduct of our moral conscience and our lives.
That is, that's a beautiful sentence, and I want to pause for a minute and take a deep breath and think about it. So, as I said earlier, Rabbi Jeff, there are people listening to the show. They're full of themselves. They don't believe in anything. They believe that they're demigods. They don't believe that there's anything after they die. They're in great shape. They've never had a disease. They have all of the money, all the power, all the women they want. And I remind them that they're not more than 2 or 3 generations, no matter what their religion, away from a religious person. You know that's a fact, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, by the way, that is the ultimate bankruptcy of ethical humanism and Immanuel Kant. And I believe firmly that if, we say we're 6 degrees of separation. I think it's only 2 generations, as you said, away from real traditional religious lifestyle.
You take a look at the lowest form of humanity in Hollywood, the girls who exhibit every part of their body every second on Instagram or on YouTube, showing their body parts, making a mockery of their own existence. You look back, probably 2 generations, there was a religious grandmother who went to church every day. How did this happen? How does the world fall apart like this, Jeff? And moreover, how does the world get put back together again? Or is it like Humpty Dumpty that can never be put back together again?
No, there is always resolution and salvation. There is always redemption. I think that the manner in which people have lost or have strayed from tradition is that they are influenced by circumstances and lifestyle that they tend to believe, and I say believe, that they control. And if they can control it, they therefore define the terms of their existence. But the truth is...
Jeff, okay, let's look at Eric Schneiderman, New York Attorney General, the fall from grace overnight. Is this not almost a biblical story?
Well, it certainly is a function of the immanence of God in our world, absolutely.
But what is the lesson in Schneiderman's power and fall from power for the average person out there? Because there's a bigger story than him falling from power virtually overnight. What is in your opinion, as a mathematician, as a religious man, I know from my point of view that it's a message, and that it comes around the time that the Trump team will be in Jerusalem, opening a U.S. embassy, which is biblical in proportion. Is there something in your mind in the air that's going on that's way beyond these 2 stories?
I honestly feel that for those who are perceptive enough to realize we see the hand of God in every aspect of our being. And this is a very dramatic presentation of God's involvement in our world, God's sense of justice, God's sense of value and balance. It is not for us to attempt to understand within the myopia of our minds the ultimate extent of God's wisdom. But certainly within the context of what we see and what we realize, just as the state of Israel was a miracle unto itself, the relocation of the embassy, the events, the current events in New York State, God is reminding us who is really in charge. And I think it is essential for us to reorient our moral compass in that direction.
Rabbi, hold on a minute, because there's a couple of things I want to add to this issue about Jerusalem and the embassy that I know from a conversation last night with someone who will actually be there at the embassy opening. I was asked the question to ask my audience, which I will ask the audience, which I'll ask right now, which is this. Which states were the first to congratulate President Trump in moving the embassy to Jerusalem? It is actually miraculous when you get the answer to that. Rabbi, stay with us. Everyone else, I'll be back in a moment.
Savage.
Is nothing sacred? Well, it's an interesting question, because more than 1 million children were victims of identity fraud in 2017, according to a new report, and the most common perpetrator was a family friend. With limited to no financial history, even children now are the most likely to become victims of new account fraud, and they won't realize it until years later when they apply for a credit card or loan. There are so many threats in today's connected world. And it just takes one weak link for criminals to get in there. So good thing new LifeLock identity theft protection adds the power of Norton Security to help protect you against threats to your identity and your devices that you can't easily see or fix on your own. So if you have a problem, they have agents who work to fix it. No one can stop every cyber threat, prevent all identity theft, or monitor transactions at all businesses. We know that. But new LifeLock with Norton Security is able to uncover threats you might otherwise miss. So go to LifeLock.com or call 1-800-LifeLock, and please use promo code SAVAGE, and you're going to get an additional 10% off. It's that simple. That's promo code SAVAGE for an additional 10% off, 1-800-LifeLock or LifeLock.com. What are we really talking about right now? Someone I know sends me a story right now at a college that she's at, that a male was found in the woman's bathroom recording women in the stalls, and they're looking for him. And I said, sad and sickening is what I said, sad and sickening. Speaking now with a rabbi on the radio about the power of prayer, tradition, a turning away from the world. And I guess he's gone. Is he gone? He left? I guess he had to make a living. He had to go. Okay, I got his number. We'll talk again. Chris, on the other hand, doesn't believe we need religion, and I want to hear from him as well. Chris, on WABC, go ahead, please tell us your viewpoint.
I can only speak for myself. My family was never religious. I was baptized Protestant, I think. I'm a good person. I don't videotape women in bathrooms and do all these things. I just from my own perspective, I've never felt the need to have an organized religion to be moral.
Well, you are like most modern people, by the way. And I'm not sitting here in judgment telling you to be religious, because I'm not a particularly religious person at all. I am not a man who goes to a house of worship on a regular basis. I am not a man who needs someone to lead me in prayer. But then there are days that I feel I need to be part of something more than myself, Chris. What do you do on those days that you feel alone?
Family. And look, I do. I won't sit here and say that I don't pray now and then. But what am I praying to? I have no idea what I'm praying to. But there is comfort in at least thinking that there's something there that is benevolent.
So when you pray, what do? You ask this unknown entity to help you with something?
Yeah, I don't ask for material things. I mean, that's just silly.
Like the health of a child, for example, or your health, a mother should be restored to health, something like that. Well, you're like most decent people on the earth, and I'm going to send you God, Faith, and Reason because I wrote it for you mainly. The religious people don't need that book. You need the book. And you know what I need? You to be here when I get back at the next hour.
Savage.
Have you ever taken your car in for an oil change, your mechanic finds something wrong, and bingo, surprise, you're hit with a huge repair bill? And what happens when you're not covered by the manufacturer's warranty? You're paying out of your own pocket to fix it, that's what. That's why I recommend extended vehicle protection from CarShield. If your car has 5,000 to 150,000 miles, CarShield can save you from paying for high repair bills. Replacing your engine or even a simple sensor can cost thousands. But when you're protected by CarShield, you can have your favorite mechanic or dealership fix your car. It's your choice. CarShield also provides 24/7 roadside assistance and a rental car while yours is being fixed for free. Get covered by the ultimate in extended vehicle protection. Get CarShield. How? Call 800-CAR-6100. 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 Mention code SAVAGE or visit carshield.com. Use code SAVAGE to save a big 10%. That's carshield.com or 800-CAR-6100. Code SAVAGE to save 10%. A deductible may apply.
Warning, the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. Now, here he is, author of Liberalism is a Mental Disorder, Trump's War, and God, Faith, and Reason, Michael Savage.
In all of us, time to kill, a time to heal. Never forget that. Never, ever forget that. Man is capable of many things. It's all a matter of when and how. Welcome to the Savage Nation, second part. To those of you who listened to the first part, I don't know if you know what I'm going to do in this hour because I'm not sure where I'm going to go. I was going to do, does Viagra affect your veins with the lowering of blood pressure from an expert on the subject. It's a short piece, but it's an interesting one since so many men take erectile dysfunction drugs. It's like a joke. I'm not going to tell you a joke because you ask yourself, I wonder if it's harmful. I was going to do that. Then somehow I got into religion and the morning prayer of Orthodox religious Jewish people and what it means and wrapping themselves with those weird phylacteries. What does that mean? And a rabbi called, Rabbi Jeff, who I had not heard from for 10 years, and he said, you may remember me 10 years ago. Well, Jeff, thanks for calling earlier, and I hope to hear from you in 10 more years, which will mean I'm still here and you're still here, and I'm still on the radio, because I intend to be the last man standing, by the way. Yes, after all the others have fallen by the wayside, I will still be here. It's all simple. I won't be number one. I'll be the only one. That's my goal. Why? Only because, that's all. Now, I don't want to be facetious nor comedic in the political arena, but at some point, comedy is always good. Comedy is king. Before we get back to the comedy of life, the great divine comedy of life at that, I want to tell you something that I once said years ago because we're talking about religion, and many of you don't believe, you scoff at it. I understand that. The religion itself is scoffable. When you see that Cardinal Dolan, the highest man in the Catholic Church in New York, attends a mockery of the Catholic religion and lends the Pope's hat to one of the so-called performers, if that is not idolatry, I'd like to know what is. What was he doing there? Why does he have to mingle with the lowest caste of American society? What, because they have money and power, it means they're the highest level? I've met people in undershirts who could hardly speak English who had more dignity than most of the people at the Met Gala. But I want to give you a little something that you can think about. We say that we're Americans built upon the Judeo-Christian concept, which is true. Why do we say Judeo-Christian? Because Christianity derives from Judaism. Whether you want to believe it or not doesn't matter. It's a fact that everyone knows. And what do Jewish people and Christian people believe? They believe in one God. Now, what did the Greek people believe in? They believed they are God. They believed in idolatry. They believed in worshiping themselves. So what we have in America today is a schizophrenia, a split, where we're going from the Judeo-Christian belief of a God, a supreme being, to people who think they are God. They worship themselves on Instagram. They show their bodies. They entertain. They perform. And they think the whole world is them. That's all just a little fact. There's no furtherance to that particular discussion. Just remember that before we go further. And I can jump cut from that to the news of the day, which I may do, may not do. I mean, I find it very interesting that Trump gets 3 hostages released from Korea, and the media spins it into something negative. I couldn't believe the news. They made it sound like the American hostages were held by Donald Trump. To show you how perverted most people in the media are, no matter what the man does, they twist it into something negative. Then there today, there's a CIA nominee, Gina Haspel, an all-around wonderful, great woman, by what I read, asked by this nobody, Kamala Harris, who's trying to make a name for herself, is waterboarding moral? What kind of stupid question is that outside of the facts of the time and the time in which the waterboarding was done? You all know that's a stupid question. That's like saying, did you stop beating your wife? How do you answer a question like that? So this is the best that Democrats can do, is waterboarding moral. No, it's immoral, but it's stop the terrorist attack, schmuck. How's that for an answer? Now take a walk. Go back to working for Willie Brown. Go get him coffee, because you're never going to be anything more than this. Stupid. I'm sick of stupid people pretending they're so smart. I'm sick of it. The lowest class of humanity seems to present themselves like they're the most brilliant people on the earth. Is waterboarding immoral? You hear who's asking the question? Kamala Harris. CIA nominee Gina Haspel said, how about the things you've done in your life? How many of them were immoral, Kamala? That's all. Just answer yes or no. Have you ever done anything immoral, Kamala Harris? Yes or no? You know, I don't understand Republicans. They can't do opposition research and look into the backgrounds of these people. They just did it on Schneiderman. How many months have I been saying that Republicans have to hire investigators to look into the backgrounds of their enemies, the most vocal of their enemies, and bring them down? They just did. Wait until you see what's coming with the media. You wait and see. You wait and see. I can guarantee you, as I sit here, that you're going to see private lives exposed of some of these people in the media. The louder they are, the louder they're going to fall. The ones who sit on high horses and put down Trump, wait till you see the revelations about these people in the media that will come out over the next days and months. You're going to be shocked. I won't be shocked. Now, let's get down to the real important stuff. Does Viagra affect the veins? Because many of you take male enhancement drugs. I understand women take them too now. I don't know what for. So this is what a doctor I know, a brilliant cardiologist and a vein specialist, told me. I'm going to read it now. Because I said, does Viagra in lowering the blood pressure harm the veins in some way? Because some people are worried about that, as you would say. It's affecting it something, right? He wrote, the veins, unlike the arteries, are not easily, if at all, influenced by changes in the blood pressure. The pressure that exists in our arteries, generated by the forceful squeeze of our heart muscle and influenced by the tone or state of relaxation of the arteries themselves, is dissipated as the blood travels through smaller and smaller arteries and eventually through the capillaries. When the blood emerges from the capillaries into our veins, there is very little pressure left, about 5 mm of mercury. That's very low pressure. He says venous pressure is influenced by posture, state of hydration, exercise, and by some intrinsic neurovascular reflexes that influence venous tone. But one-way flow valves, listen to how brilliant, I'm getting at something, but one-way flow valves exist in all of our veins, and these valves, when functioning normally, isolate each segment of vein from the influence of nearby segments, making the whole venous system subject to variable pressures. Now, let's pause right there. I want you to think about this, about creationism, about the grand design, the engineering that went into making us. Listen to this. One-way flow valves exist in all of our veins, and these valves, when functioning normally, isolate each segment of vein from the influence of nearby segments. You understand how brilliant that is? Did God do it? Did evolution do it? You ever think about evolution? How do these things happen? What we're made of? The right side of the heart, which is pumping venous blood into the lungs through the pulmonary circulation, also can influence venous pressure. Theoretically, Viagra, which can lower pulmonary artery pressure, could secondarily lower venous pressure. Nitroglycerin can dilate veins, thus lowering pressure too, and there are other drugs with this ability. But he adds, but our veins are by design able to stretch to a degree. And he explains it in more, I won't go into more detail, there's no point to it. And he says the genetic tendencies of venous valve failure point to collagen as a place to direct further study, and that in turn suggests that nutrition and the chemical milieu could be important. I hope this was helpful. Bottom line, not sure and very difficult to study because of all the variables. Dr. E. Now, what does that have to do with the price of eggs? What does it have to do with anything we're talking about? Well, everything and nothing. I remember when I was a kid, I think it was in Queens College, and I took a course in anatomy. And I took home a box of bones. You know, you had to take home the bones and study the names of the bones. So I took home a bird in bones, you know. And I used to sit in my room and look at the bone of a bird, and I saw that the bones were designed, they were very light. Why were they very light? You ever notice that the bone of a bird, whether it be a chicken or other bird that you may have looked at, the bones are hollowed out. They're not solid bones like that of a mammal. How does it happen that evolution or God or the grand designer designed the bone of a bird to be made with a matrix of hollow elements in it so that it's lighter? How? You ask yourself. I used to wonder at it. And then I would put the bones of the bird's wing together, and I would compare it to a mammal, a man's hand. And I said, look at that. It's very similar. Look how it's so concisely similar that a bird, a dog, a monkey, a man, if you stretch out the bird's arm, you see similar bone structures in the bird, in the man, in the monkey, and the dog. Just it's bent a different way, and there's different strengths of various bones in that arm or that wing. And I used to wonder about what did it really all mean. I still don't have the answer what it all means. All I can do is wonder and think about it. And it comes back to what I do every day on the radio. I am going through a metamorphosis, as you must know. To take a chance as I'm taking today and talking about God and talking about religion and talking about prayer is very daring when you think about it, because the average person could easily turn the show off because it's too challenging in some ways, and it's not a place that you turn to for any discussion of this nature. Is that correct or incorrect? Do you want to hear about this, or would you rather hear about the news of the day? I myself don't think my job is to just report on the news of the day and take stupid questions like I'm a genius, when all I'm doing is reading something on the internet. Well, what does it take to do that? And then quote a Bible or this. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not going to do it anymore. So I'm emerging, and I'm going through a metamorphosis on the radio. Where it exactly leads, I don't know. I got to tell you this like from the heart. I got to go back to my trip to Washington 2 weeks ago when President Trump invited me to see him and Vice President Pence. And then I saw Speaker McCarthy, each for 30 minutes. And then I was in the congressional dining room and I met some people. Things happened. I said to myself, this was not by accident. This was by design. This didn't happen by chance. I may think it happened by chance, but I don't believe it happened by chance. And I said to myself, I'm in the dugout. They're warming me up. All I could think of is that I'm in the dugout right now. Or what do you call it out there in the field when their pitcher is throwing out in the outfield when they're warming up? It's not in the dugout. What is that? They're just warming the pitcher up out there, right? In the outfield when he's pitching. I feel I'm being warmed up for something that's coming downstream, and I don't know what it is. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what it is, but I'm prepared. I'm ready, willing, and able to put the uniform on and go to war in another way for this nation. So I know that I'm here for something more than this, even though this unto itself is, in a phrase, a Hebrew phrase, Dayenu, it's enough for me. Dayenu, and that's enough. God gave me a lot. If this is it, if this is all it is, so be it. It's enough for me. But if there's more, so be it. Then that's what God wants from me. But I don't believe that this road has come to an end. I don't think this road has come to a cul-de-sac. I don't think this road has come to an exit sign. Something is happening on a higher level than I can even perceive, and I'm being drawn to another place, which is why I did a show like this today. It's because I feel I have not been faithful enough to God on this show in recent times. And I have to take a quick break before I say something. The stripper's lawyer be sanctioned and disbarred. You betcha. Do you think lawyers like that dirtbag working for the dirty stripper should be able to come up with a story like this about $500,000 sent to Trump's lawyer Cohen? I mean, that's a lawyer's job, is to smear somebody in the press with NBC News running wild and free and naked with the story and the rest of the fake news media trotting along with them? How in the world can this country survive when dirtbag lawyers are allowed to get up there and be given credence by the left-wing press? Then there's another story tied to this that I was going to do, because I'm going to go from the divine to the momentary. President Donald Trump suggested Wednesday that he might revoke White House credentials for some journalists because of the dramatic leftward tilt in television news coverage about him. And they show how twisted they are. Well, Matt Drudge, the internet publisher behind the Drudge Report website, posted a very rare personal tweet Wednesday morning to warn about what might follow from the White House. And Matt Drudge said, "I fear the future result of Trump's crusade on fake news will be licensing of all reporters," Drudge wrote, noting that Democrats already floated this in the Senate pre-Trump. Well, he's right. And Drudge said the mop-up on this issue is going to be excruciating. Now, this is a very important story because Trump may have stepped into something that he will regret, which is revoking the White House credentials for some journalists. Because the next step for that is licensing reporters. Now, you may say, yeah, license them. Well, what does that actually mean? A government person is going to license a reporter? You can't have that, because today's government won't be tomorrow's government. And while today's government may not license the liars that we know are around the clock disseminating fake news, let's say a Democrat wins in a couple of years. What, then they're not going to license people like me because they don't like me? Then we lose the First Amendment. So, no, we cannot revoke White House credentials. There are ways to deal with them, though, Mr. Trump, which is to just shut their mouths. Create some protocols for these loudmouth bums. The ones who had nothing to say during the years Obama was stealing our country from us, are suddenly, they found their voice. The littlest chick from Journalism 101, from 10th grade journalism school, screams out after the announcement on Iran, she screams out her big mouth a question, like she's as important as he is. Just make it no. No, you can't scream out questions at a press hearing or you will be thrown out and your credentials will be revoked. That's a little different.
Savage.
Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was a very primitive empire. Did you know the Roman Empire, like ours, did not educate, did not explain itself to its multitudes of citizens, many of whom didn't even speak the language? Did you know the Roman Empire, before it collapsed, did not invite the cooperation of the citizens in its decisions? Did you know the Roman Empire was in many ways run by adventurers who were there only for power? From the days of Marius and Sulla, they didn't really care about public opinion. They thought that the average person was a moron. Did you know that the spirit of citizenship in Rome died of starvation because the people were no longer important to the rulers? And there was no will for the Roman Empire to survive, and so it came to an end. So there are some parallels to the fall of Rome and the fall of the West. We know that. And then along came Donald Trump, who was trying to reinvigorate a faith in the Western world, the opposite of what you are being told by the fake newsers. He's the opposite of everything you're being told. In many ways, I would compare him to, who was it I compared him to? Almost saved the West from the onslaught of the Muslims. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? He came along, Constantine. In many ways, Trump is almost like Constantine. He's been compared to some, but no one's ever compared him to Constantine. Now, I know many of you say, come on, Savage, that's a little bit of a stretch. And those of you who believe in God and are left-wing Jesuits like Jerry Brown say it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. Yet they take the money from the rich men, not from the poor. It's easy to say it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God then. But the people who say that usually depend upon the rich men to run their churches and their governments. So how does that work? There's always some problem in life that you have to figure out. And at a certain point, you can't go any further with it. You say, I don't want to even think about it. I do what I have to do. So then you drink 2 bottles of wine at night, then you have whiskey, and then you beat up women. If you're like Eric Schneiderman, according to the stories. We don't know if he actually did it. I mean, we can't believe he actually did a thing like that. After all, he was Attorney General. He wouldn't do a thing like that. Would a top cop ever do that to women? No. No way. No, he wouldn't do a thing like that. He was such an eloquent arguer for women's rights. He was such a desirable man on the circuit of the snowflake women who believed in him. They all lined up to be with Eric Schneiderman because he was for the Me Too movement. Little did they know that he was using them as a chorus line. These are just some of the casual observations. Now, here's a crazy story that I really think goes to the whole problem of our times. It was from the Washington Post yesterday, Ruth Marcus. Ladies' lingerie. It was a lame, outmoded joke, the sort of thing you say in a crowded elevator to alleviate the discomfort of being jammed among strangers, an artifact of the days of fancy department stores with operators announcing the floor stops. So a guy was in an elevator with a lot of people at a conference in, don't you know, San Francisco. And all he said was, it was in, of course, the sickest city on earth, San Francisco, at the annual meeting of the International Studies Association. And a professor of political theory at King's College London and a recipient of ICE's Distinguished Scholar Award is in the elevator, and someone calls out to ask for floor requests. And this distinguished professor says ladies' lingerie. What happens? Some low-life degenerate, a professor of women's studies and gender studies, which is a fake field, by the way. Women's and gender studies is created specifically to bring down the universities, in my estimation. So someone in the elevator from so-called women's and gender studies is in the college, from a know-nothing college, and she takes offense. And she lodges a complaint against the man who says ladies' lingerie. And everyone laughed in the elevator. And it was a joke. Just a joke. So she gets offended. The woman who was offended said, I wonder if we should have told them that it's no longer acceptable to make these jokes. I wonder if we should have told them that it's no longer acceptable to make these kind of statements when women are in the elevator. And she goes on with her high horse. As a survivor of sexual harassment in the academy, I'm quite shaken by this incident. So they then inform the male professor of the complaint filed by this little feminazi. And then she wants a written complaint. And he says, I certainly had no desire to insult women and to make you feel uncomfortable. And the woman, he says, may have interpreted his remark out of context. He says, I am strongly opposed to the exploitation, coercion, or humiliation of women. But that wasn't enough for the woman. She wants him thrown out. She wants him thrown out because his remarks were offensive and inappropriate. And an even more serious violation imaginable is not possible. How dare you, says the man running the organization, to reach out to the professor and term her complaint frivolous, and so forth and so on. So she called his elevator joke offensive. He called her complaint frivolous. He won't apologize. And this is the world we're now living in. In other words, in Nazi Germany, let me put it another way. In Nazi Germany, the children were told to report parents who were not sufficiently supportive of the government at the time, the Nazi government. Are you telling me there are no parallels between what I am reading to you in this story? You're telling me there's no parallels to Nazism or fascism? And what some are doing in the name of women or gay or this or that they're offended by anything that might, in the smallest possible way, be termed offensive, and they're willing to destroy a person's life because they might be offended in their super paranoid, hypervigilant state of paranoia. Everything that's said seems to be directed at them. Now, I wrote a book years ago called The Enemy Within. Wow, was that ever prescient? The Enemy Within. Another book I wrote was Liberalism is a Mental Disorder. Wow, does that answer a lot of questions? You know, for years I would say, when you can't figure something out, plug in the formula. People would scratch their heads and say, why would they do a thing like that? One thing or another. And say, well, plug in the formula, liberalism is a mental disorder. And I also said to you many times that most extreme liberals are on medication. How many times have I told you that? They're extremely high users of psychoactive drugs, tranquilizers, antidepressants. It doesn't mean everyone who uses them is nuts. Don't get me wrong. Drugs have their place in our society. But there's an inordinately large overuse of these drugs, I used to say to you, amongst these super liberals. Now, then you see the Schneiderman story. And she said he was drinking 2 bottles of wine a night, then Xanax, and then hard whiskey in bed. Okay. And what? What do you draw from that? Whatever you want to draw from it. So there we are. It's just a number of random thoughts today. I'm not trying to cohesively bring you to any particular place. I'm trying to elucidate for you the insanity of our times. When you have real problems in the world, real suffering in the world, real dying and pain in the world, all the thousands of children dying in back wards of hospitals from leukemia and from other forms of cancer, not a word from these hypersensitive feminists. When thousands of young Christian and Yazidi girls were being raped around the clock by the Muslim fanatics in ISIS, all these hypersensitive feminists had nothing to say about the young girls who were raped around the clock by armies of degenerates in ISIS. But if someone says something in an elevator, oh, there they are, Jenny on the spot. There she is, offended and ready to roll. That's the real problem, not the girls being raped by the Muslims. Not the gays being thrown off the roof by the Iranians. No, the real problem is a man saying ladies' lingerie in an elevator. That's the real context of our times. A man's life should be destroyed for that. I hear the elephants cry at night as I hear them being shot and their elephant families cry out in pain. The elephant families are more social than most American families are. They bury their dead. They grieve for their dead. And we do nothing for it. And I reach out and try to get some gigantic person in the Senate to help me, and many of you morons go on my Twitter feed and say that I've sold out for talking to Lindsey Graham. This shows you how stupid you are. How stupid the audiences are today. I find someone on the other side who's more liberal than you may like, that I may like, who was impressed enough to want to work with me, invites me to Africa with him and Bono and others to try and save these magnificent creatures. And guess what on Twitter? They're calling me names. I've sold out for talking to Lindsey Graham. This is called stupidity. This is called people who don't know the first thing about the real world. This is called defamation of character. And this is what you have to deal with if you're in the public eye, as I am. You have to put up with it. You have options, which is shut down your Twitter account, shut down Facebook, don't take any comments on the website, do your radio show, and if you don't like what someone's saying, hang up on them. You can't listen to everybody in the world. I mean, you can start listening to everybody, you go crazy. Do they really know what they're talking about? If they make comments like that? When the time is so short to save these magnificent creatures from the vermin in China and elsewhere who want ivory on their little bourgeois apartment. They want a little ivory carved. I'd make it a death sentence. You buy ivory, I'll put you in jail for 20 years. It's like the end buyer. Don't talk to me about the poachers. Talk to me about the buyers of the ivory. You trade in ivory, death sentence. You buy ivory, 20 years in jail. How's that? Does that work for you? You want to stop things, then stop things. You want to stop drugs in America? Don't do it in a piecemeal way. Kill the drug dealers. That's all. Trump said it once. He never said it again. Don't think it might not happen in this country, because we're at a tipping point in this country of addiction where we can't come back from it. I don't see how we come back from it. Trump again on the drug thing, just to talk about that for a minute. There was a prescription turn-in day the other day. Tons and tons of oxy and other dangerous drugs were turned in around the country. In every city, in every state of the land, it was done by the Trump administration to stop the drug epidemic. Did he get credit for that from these vermin, these lowlifes, these stupid people in the media, these idiots? No. No. So he's doing some great things. He's battling on many fronts. And he's being undermined by a degenerate stripper and a moronic lawyer who should be constrained, and a verminous media that has no sense of what their purpose is in this society. They think it's just to get Donald Trump. You want to constrain people? Start with Jeff Zucker of CNN. Bring him before Congress. Question his motives, that he lets his puppets and marionettes on CNN do what they do every day, distorting and twisting, not with fake news, but outright propaganda around the clock. A country cannot survive this. How did the introduction to the enemy within go? Those of you who bought that book years ago in 2006, who did I quote? Cicero, Roman orator, 42 BC. A nation can survive its fools, Jeff Zucker, and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within, Jeff Zucker. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, Jeff, for he is known and carries his banner openly. But the traitor moves amongst those within the gate freely, his sly whispers rustling through all the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. Jeff, you see, the traitor appears not a traitor, Jeff and Wolf. The traitor speaks in accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face in their arguments. He appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men, Wolf. He rots the soul of a nation, Jeff. He works secretly and unknown in the night, Wolf, to undermine the pillars of the city, Jeff. He infects the body politic, Wolf, so that it can no longer resist. Jeff and Wolf, a murderer is less to fear. This is the Savage Nation. Be here or be nowhere.
Savage.
Hey, big news for you. In the last 2 weeks, Simply Safe won Editor's Choice Awards. Did you know from CNET Magazine, PC Magazine, and The Wirecutter, there are 3 respected product testers, all of them. And what they did was they put Simply Safe through a battery of tests. They compared it to other home security products, and Simply Safe won every time. I've been telling you about Simply Safe for a while now. In my opinion, it's the best home security system, hands down. They now protect over 2 million Americans. You've got to try them. Now, in your home, you'll find the sensors are very tiny. You won't even notice them. Easy to use. You can control this from your phone. But here's the most important reason to try it. It's not a gadget. It's comprehensive protection for all your windows, your doors, your entire home. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You get professional alarm monitoring there around the clock, and it's only $15 a month. No contracts. No one else is doing it like this. They're the best. Learn more about how Simply Safe can help protect your home. Just go to simplysafesavage.com. Write it down. That's simplysafesavage.com. Now, here's another story that just came out. Stormy's lawyer, if you want to call him a lawyer, has the wrong Michael Cohen in one of his transactions, yet it didn't stop the press from taking the lies that he disseminated to them as truths. Michael Avenatti's document dump shows alleged questionable financial transfer involving Michael Cohen, but according to the Israeli paper Haaretz, there's a glaring error at least one of the transactions, and that is a transfer from a bank account in Kenya belonging to Nathaniel Cohen and Stav Hayun, Haaretz reports. Nathaniel Cohen does not know Michael Cohen, but he does have a brother named Michael Cohen. So how can a pornography actress's, if you want to call her that, lawyer get away with a thing like this without being censored, number one, not being taken seriously by the news media, number two, and be pulled forward for disbarment hearings, number three? Have you ever seen a case like this where a lawyer, a mad lawyer like this, so desperate for attention and with so many friends in the mainstream degenerate media that he doesn't stop trying to bring down a duly elected president and steal the election from all of us who elect Donald Trump? How can this go on? How can a nation survive this? So when I see that Trump floats decredentialing media, he's got it half right. He's got to decredential lawyers. What we so desperately need in this country more than anything in the world is tort reform. It's far more important than tort reform. I say leave the hookers alone because they do much less harm than do the vermin with law degrees. We need tort reform. We need the American Bar Association brought before the Senate and made to explain how they let the lowest class of humanity get away with things that a criminal couldn't get away with. Agree or disagree? Tort reform or tort reform?